Throughout the Vietnam War, as well as its aftermath, the horrors involved with warfare allowed for people to reflect on their individual freedoms. As communication improved, stories about war atrocities spread easily. In any war, there have always been draft dodgers who have fought against conscription. The United States played a major role in the Vietnam War, providing soldiers to fight. At the time, a draft system determined the suitable candidates fit to fight in the war, causing many to object this violation of freedom. African Americans have served in every war waged by the United States. African Americans played a major role in Vietnam and in the process changed the complexion of the U.S. Armed Forces. Segregated African American units, usually officered by whites, performed in both combat and support capacities. Americans often did supply a disproportionate number of combat troops. Although they made up less than 10% of the U.S. Armed Forces and 13% of the U.S. population between 1961 and 1966, they accounted for almost 20% of all combat-related deaths in Vietnam during that period. In 1965 alone, African Americans represented almost 1/4 of the Army's killed in action. Of Army and Marine total strengths frequently contributed half the men in frontline combat units, especially in rifle squads and fire teams. Final casualty estimates do not support the assertion that African Americans suffered disproportionate losses in Vietnam, but this in no way diminishes the fact that they bore a heavy share of the fighting burden.
Muhammad Ali, formerly known as Cassius Clay, was drafted into the military in 1967, refused, and was convicted for refusing to serve in the military. He refused on grounds of religious beliefs. He was stripped of his title as world champion boxer and was banned from fighting anywhere in the United States. He was also stripped of his passport, which meant he could not fight in another country as well. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. His case was overturned in 1971 by an unanimous 8-0 vote. Muhammad Ali started to tour around the United States and speak at colleges. The resistance to go to war in Vietnam was growing around this time, and many people sympathized with Ali. Although he talked about racial justice and African American pride, he also criticized the Vietnam War. Muhammad Ali stated that if he thought that the war would actually bring freedom, they wouldn't have to draft him. He would join the army of his own free will, stating that, "If I thought the war was going to bring freedom and equality to 22 million of my people, they wouldn't have to draft me. I'd join tomorrow." He also questioned why the US was fighting Vietnam. "Why should they ask me to put on a uniform and go 10,000 miles from home and drop bombs and bullets on brown people in Vietnam, while so-called Negro people in Louisville are treated like dogs and denied simple human rights?" Muhammad Ali changed people's views on freedom throughout the Vietnam War. People were questioning whether they were justified to go to Vietnam and fight in the war. Muhammad Ali provided inspiration for not only African Americans, but instead, he provided inspiration for Americans as a whole. Due to the fact that he was not only African American, but a famous boxer as well, his story reached out to many Americans. He became someone that many people looked up to for inspiration.
Vietnam Veterans Against the War began as a slogan in a grand nonviolent protest to end the war. The anti-war demonstration included over 400,000 protesters and about 20 veterans from the Vietnam War holding up banners that read the memorable slogan. Following the protest, a veteran by the name of Jan Barry Crum with 5 other veterans created a new anti-war organization that grew to over 30,000 members. Vietnam Veterans Against the War, or VVAW, became an organization that fought the regime and did not fear to express their ideologies. This unprecedented act of freedom to fight the draft and to expose the injustices of the Vietnam War became known as the Winter Soldier Investigation. The Winter Soldier Investigation was a media event sponsored by the VVAW. It was intended to show the U.S. public the war crimes and atrocities that the United States Armed Forces were employing. The VVAW would fearlessly challenge the moral conduct of war by comparing and contrasting the direct relationships between the military's policies and the war crimes that were currently taking place in Vietnam. The VVAW would be able to fight the boundaries created by the military by collecting testimonies from Vietnam War veterans. Over the course of 2 months, the VVAW was able to collect over 109 testimonies from veterans who shared a variety of views. The one view that held constant through just about every veteran who gave their testimony was that they had first-hand experience in witnessing the war crimes being committed by their own country. Although the Winter Soldier investigation was not extensively covered throughout the country, it seemed that the Vietnam War gave people the courage to go beyond the circumscriptions of their government. A new age was coming, one that allowed people to control what they did and what they desired. In essence, the Vietnam War and its protests against it brought along a subconscious change in the way people saw freedom and their personal rights.